All right, we're here for another episode of the It's Not What You Think podcast. I'm here with Christopher James Gill. Uh, Chris and I hooked up with each other on social media and kind of followed each other. And Chris, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you've done and where you come from and what you've experienced?
Sure, yeah, I'll do the best I can. Um, I'm here from the Indiana area, Indianapolis, Illinois. Kind of migrate between those two states depending. 40 years old. Became well, actually, originally when I was 17, I dropped out of high school, got my GED because I wanted to join the Marine Corps. And I got to the Marine Corps recruiting office. They said, "Glad you're a patriotic kid, but you've got to have some college credit hours or a high school diploma since you got your GED." So I ended up going and taking an entrance test to Indiana State University. Scored high enough, I got a scholarship to go there. So ended up being a freshman in college, which should have been my senior year in high school. And kind of got into the college life. So instead of joining the Marine Corps after the first semester, I stayed until I was 21. My plan would always be go to the Marine Corps, serve 4 8 years, something like that, then get out and become a police officer. Just as a fluke, I applied for a police department hiring right on my 21st birthday. It was the deadline to apply was the day I turned 21. Um, so instead of going out and getting drunk the night before like everybody else does, I had to get up early and go for my physical test. Ended up getting hired less than 2 weeks later and started my career in law enforcement, which I did for right at 10 years. And by that point, I'd finished my master's degree and ended up getting into finance. Always kept my hand in law enforcement in one way or another. Still own a company called Alpha Omega Protection, where I teach close quarter combat, self defense, things like that to both public and private law enforcement. More private these days. Kind of migrated from public to private more because of the money than anything else. But with budget cuts and people treating police like absolute hell these days, man, the marketability for it is just going way down, unfortunately.
Now you do gi jiu-jitsu, correct? Is
So
that
I started no-gi, 2006. I started no-gi, picked up the gi in 2008. And, I kind of did both. Did MMA for a while and was always a believer that you really had to do both to get to really be good at it. So, yeah,
yeah,
both. Yeah.
awesome.
So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, started martial arts when I think I was 6 or 7. Um, Started off with Taekwondo and really learned, by 11 years old, I had my McDojo black belt and walking around thinking I was a badass until a kid challenged me to a fight and he punched me in the nose and I cried and ran home. And yeah,
There's something
realized how
said
quick
about the
that,
flexibility that you get from Taekwondo,
hey,
though you
listen,
started
and
young.
I will. So the Taekwondo I took, I will say, was more of a McDojo black belt than anything. Not all Taekwondo is like that, and really, it's not the art itself. It comes down to how it's taught. And unfortunately, because kids are the perfect targets to make money off of, what a lot of not just Taekwondo, but I see martial arts all over doing it, really, really bringing down the intensity and the probability of getting hurt or not even hurt, but feeling any kind of pain or uncomfortability to make kids happier, right? So
Amen.
Taekwondo, man, yeah, listen, I know some badass Taekwondo practitioners, but they were taught to kick hard. They were taught to punch in the face. Hell, man, now I go to a tournament and I see Taekwondo practitioners wearing a whole face shield, vests. They're like, there's no possibility of even getting injured. Like, how is that going to prepare you for a fight if that possibility is not there? If you're not willing to endure a little bit of uncomfortability or pain, man, it doesn't suit you. And after I learned how quick that would get my ass kicked, for about a year I got bullied a lot, really, because I was afraid of getting hit again or getting my butt kicked, man. And finally, my parents got sick of it and they stuck me in boxing, where you get hit in the face every other day. And after a month or two of that, I really, really didn't care about getting punched in the face anymore. So I've competed in everything from grappling to MMA, boxing, kickboxing, you name it. I was never great at it because I was always trying to be a power lifter or bodybuilder at the same time. So I never really became overly good at either because, the training, you really have to, if you want to be big and strong, you got to train to be big and strong. If you want to be a good fighter, you've got to train to be a good fighter. The two don't really mix, but I tried to do both. So
Yeah, I trained a couple bodybuilders, and they're pretty funny to train with. But it's interesting because when I was a kid, those were the guys that I was always scared of, the big
Yep.
muscular guys. And
Oh, me
then
too.
as I started doing martial arts, those were the guys I sought out to beat up, to make myself feel better. You
You know,
know?
in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, man, there were two people that I would always enjoy the hell out of when they came in. One were the bodybuilders, right? Because they came in thinking they were just going to kick everybody's ass, right? And the second one, I love this one more. And again, all respect to military, but I like the military guys who were newer, who had their 40-hour combatives class for like ground fighting. And they would come in, and I was a purple belt at the time, and they would be like, hey, listen, man, if you need any help with this, I'm combatives trained in the military. So, if you need me to go slow or anything, I'm like, I train 40 hours a week almost, and you have trained 40 hours total, but somehow you think there's some super secret Adonis technique that's going to get, yeah, man, let's do this. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was always a good time.
Uh, was there any a time that you can think of specifically during your law enforcement career that you used, martial arts, in the moment,
Yeah,
during some encounters with,
sure.
perpetrators or
So
combatants?
I'll leave the department's name out. But when I first started, I got hired at a city in Illinois, and I spent the first 5 or 6 years of my career there. And then I transferred and came over to Indiana, where I was put on the FBI task force. In Illinois, when I got there, the rules were a lot different, man. The city I was in was really meth ridden, drug ridden, lots of fights, domestic battery. It was, I won't say an every shift thing, but it was at least a once or twice a week thing where, yeah, you would have to fight somebody or go hands on with them. Um, when I got there, the department kind of had a reputation for not really wanting to fight people, whatever else, kind of path of least resistance. There was one other guy on the department who would really hammer it out if he needed to, and he ended up being my field training officer. And I remember after I got out of the academy, my first week, I'm with him, and we'd arrested somebody, and we went into the jail. Well, the sheriff at that time was elected. He was a businessman, no law enforcement experience, didn't have a clue, and he had put a higher-ranking gang member from Chicago as a trustee in the jail. So this trustee just got to walk around, do whatever he wanted. His name was Gene Ray Marchant. Don't care if anybody hears his name, he'll remember me. Um, I'm in the jail, and this Gene Ray guy sees me, and he just rams his shoulder into me, shoulder chucks me, knocks me back. I did absolutely nothing about it. Here I am, 21, brand new. I'm thinking in my head, this dude's already in jail. What else can I do to him, right? So me and my sergeant go through, and we do our paperwork, whatever. Sergeant says nothing to me. We get out to the car. He looks at me, and he says, if that ever happens again, he says, I'm going to send you home, suspend you for 3 days, and request your termination. I said, what are you talking about, Sarge? He said, Gene Ray in there ran his shoulder into you, and you did nothing about it. I said, what was I supposed to do? He said, if you ever want any respect in this business, you kick the shit out of him for that. Or he didn't say kick the shit. Those are kind of my words. He said, you do what you have to do to make sure he doesn't do it again. And I look
Right.
at him, I said, wait, I can do that when he's already been arrested. He goes, you will do that if you want to make it. That just kind of flipped a switch for me. Like, all right. And that was kind of my life philosophy from there on out. And I got thinking, there are a lot of law enforcement officers who do a great job. That either they're scared of fighting, they can't fight, they don't like to fight, whatever the case is. Well, I figure that's not me. So if I run into somebody that really wants to fight the police, well, maybe if I do it and they learn they can't mess with the police, I'm going to save somebody who can't fight a butt whooping or something at some point, right? And I will tell you what, it took about a year and a half, 2 years there where, and I was fair with people. I remember a point, there was a local troublemaker in town. He was about 6'6", 6'7". Not a great big guy, but just really tall, and he liked to fight the police all the time. I got called one night, and everybody's like, he's going to want to fight. Be careful, be careful. I got there. I said, okay. I got there, and he's drunk, and he puts his fist up. He says, come on, Gill, me and you, let's go. I said, all right, man. I drug him up one side of the street and down the other, and kicked the shit out of him. And afterwards, I didn't arrest him. He goes, well, why aren't you arresting me? I said, I think this does it in its place, man. I said, just guarantee me I'm never going to have this trouble out of you again. I never had trouble with him ever. In fact, 6 or 8 months later, I got a call where officers needed backup. I get there, and there's one officer on one side of him and another officer on the other side, and he's standing in the middle with his fists up. And I walk up, I said, "Hey." And he looks around and he goes, "Oh, shit, Gill, man, I'm sorry." And he turned around and put his hands behind his back. You know, what I found is if you treated people with dignity and respect, man, like, unless someone was just all out fighting, trying to kill you, get away, whatever, and it was just something stupid and they just wanted to be a dick, you kick their ass, don't arrest them. You're never going to have that issue with them again, and they treat you with a lot of respect from there on out. And that's kind of the way I did it. So after a year or two, I never had to fight the same person twice, with very few exceptions. And, of course, there were certainly people that didn't like me, but there were also a lot of people that really respected me for that, and it was nice because then my reputation kind of carried me, and then I didn't have to get the black eyes anymore. And I remember in 10 years of law enforcement, and this may be a story you want to hear or not, it's up to you, only one person ever that intimidated me, scared me. I won't say scared, but really intimidated me. And that's if you want to hear it, I'm happy to tell it. But he was a crazy cat, man.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the story
Yeah.
where the only time in 10 years of all the crazy stuff you
Yeah.
experienced, intimidated.
And so there was this guy who'd moved up from Texas, and he transferred his parole from Texas. And my first interaction with this guy was he married a local girl. And we got called after his wedding reception. His wife was calling, screaming on the phone, "Help, help, my husband, so-and-so, leave his name out. He's getting jumped. 5 guys are attacking him. Help." So I get there, and this guy, he was about 6'4", 6'5", maybe 220, 230. He didn't work out. He was just one of those guys that was just naturally built. You know what I mean? Like just naturally big, strong dude. And come to find out, man, there was something off upstairs with this guy. And I said, "Hey, so-and-so," I said, "What's going on? Someone jumped?" He goes, "Yeah, man, the aliens." I'm like, "Okay. Well, where are these guys?" He's like, "I don't know. They're out there somewhere. I kicked the shit out of them." I'm like, "What?" I follow a trail out about 100 yards. There's one guy laying in a ditch, beat to shit. There's another guy, another guy, another guy. The 5th person had got away, or so I thought. When I caught up with this guy later, his nose was gone. This guy had bit this guy's nose completely off his face and spit it back at him.
Fuck.
So this guy, I mean, he didn't just beat he hammered all 5 of these guys, man. And I start looking back, trying to get the story on this guy. What had happened in Texas while he was on parole is his wife there had been having an affair. And he didn't really believe in hitting women. So for justice, he went to her family's, 2 or 3 different houses and set them on fire and burned them down. And when he got arrested in a pool hall. He backed himself into a corner with the stick. And I mean, things get exaggerated, so I don't really know. But the way they tell it is it took 12 or 13 cops, pepper spray, tasers, everything to finally get this guy contained. And the next encounter I had with this guy was I got called to a bar fight. And I walk in, and there's this guy sitting there bent over. And I look at his back because his shirt's off. He had been stabbed, and the back of his lung was coming out of his back. And he's sitting there breathing. He's like, "I'm dying, Chris. I think I'm going to die." I was like, "We'll get you through this, man." He said, "Do you know who did this?" He goes, "Yeah, so-and-so." And I said, "Okay. Do you know where he is?" He's like, "Yeah, he's in the corner over there. I'm pretty sure I killed him." After this guy shanked him in the back to where his lung is hanging out, he still beat this guy almost to death. The guy didn't die, but it was close. He was in critical care. Beat this guy damn near to death after being stabbed in the lungs like that, man. And fast forward a year or so, parole issued a warrant for him to send him back to prison. Well, here I go. Not because I had any vendetta against the guy, but just because I was who I was relentless on looking for him. I was going to his family's house. I mean, I was just every shift. I was looking for this guy, right? Finally, one night, the sheriff just happened to be driving by on a country road and saw him walking. He said, "Hey, get in. You're under arrest." He got in, no problem. Wasn't an issue. Took him up to the bullpen in the jail we had in our county. Now, the way the bullpen was is it would hold, 10 people, but I think there were 13 in it at this point. And the way it was, it had a door that went in and out like this, so only one person could get in and out at a time, right? They said it was for safety. Well, he starts screaming I mean, he's ripped a TV off the wall. He's beating the inmates up there. Like all 13 of these guys are like getting their ass beat up there, hiding under beds, everything. And he starts screaming, "I won't stop until you give me Gill. Give me Chris Gill. I want his ass up here." I'm like, oh shit. Well, it just so happened we were busy that night. Everybody was out in the county. There was no backup. It was me and one other officer in there. And I'm sitting there scratching my head. I'm like, shit, man, what the fuck do I do here? So finally I came to the determination. I told my partner, I'm like, I took off my gun belt. I said, since we can't go in there and rush this guy because only one can go in at a time, I said, look, man, I said, you've got to take your gun out. I said, I'm going to go in there and do what I can. I said, he starts getting the better of me. You're going to have to shoot and kill this guy. Right? Like, you can fight somebody, but he's the type of person like, if I broke his arm, he wouldn't care. He'd just pick it up and beat me with it. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
there was
he's
something.
the type of guy that would try to bite your jugular vein with
Right.
his,
Well,
he'd
really,
fucking
like,
kill you.
my only hope would have been to catch him in a rear naked choke and hope it worked on him. That would have been, really. And so he said, okay, I'm getting ready to go in. And about that time, 3 or 4 deputies heard the call off duty come in with their tasers and get him. But as far as I'm concerned, man, that was a pretty close brush with death for me. So I am glad that I did not have to go in and,
Well, I
and
mean,
figure that
you're
one out
black
because,
belt,
man,
you're a black belt, right, Chris?
no, purple
Oh, you're a
still.
purple belt. Oh, wow. Well, you still would have put that
Yeah.
motherfucker to sleep. Let's be realistic.
Man, I don't know, bro. University of Calgary did an interesting study on the rear naked choke. And
Oh,
there's something like 8% of the population that is ineffective on completely. My luck, he would have been in one of those 8%. You know
oh,
what I
wow.
mean? Like it,
Wow, yeah. I
yeah.
wonder where they got these
And
volunteers
it's a
from.
different world. Like it's great to train Brazilian jiu-jitsu, all that. But in reality, like when I'm grappling with somebody, they're not trying to bite me. They're not trying to poke my eyes out. So, when I would train close quarter combat for law enforcement, I would try to add as many, I called it in realism-based integrated scenario to where I would add as many realistic factors. In fact, one of the things I used to do to try to get my point across is when I was teaching a class, I would say, I want you to get the toughest, best, the best handcuffing people. Somebody raised their hand, come up. I said, okay, I'm going to show you this quick hand, and I would just show a real simple handcuffing technique with like 3 or 4 steps. I would say, I want you to practice on this person. Say, okay. I said, you feel comfortable with it? I said, yeah. I said, okay, now I'm going to time you. Do it as fast as you can. 6, 7 seconds. If it was 7 seconds, we'll say. Say, okay, that's great. Now let's add another stress factor to it. Say, okay. I would take a taser with a spent cartridge and I would hook it up to him. So if I turn it on, it'd 5 seconds shock the piss out of you, which really sucks, by the way. And I said, okay. I said, when I say go, you're going to handcuff this guy again. Now your record is 7 seconds. If you don't do it in at least 7 seconds, as soon as you hit that 7-second mark, man, I'm turning this taser on. I'm not going to count down for you. I'm not going to tell you when it is. I'm just going to tell you, like, if I see that watch at 7 seconds, I'm cranking this taser on. How many people you think got it done in 7 seconds? Man, not very many. Because you're adding that realism, that stress factor to it, and all of a sudden, what happens with your body is, a real interesting book by Dave Grossman talks about the difference in fine and gross motor skills. And when you get really stressed out and that fight, flight, or freeze kicks in, all the blood rushes from your head, man, because your body's is trained to go to your organs, preserve life, all that. So you're not thinking as clearly as you normally would, right? So the synapses aren't firing right. You're not going to be able to do those fine motor skill based movements. And for those of you who don't know the difference, a gross motor skill would be like a punch, a push, a pull, a throw, whatever. A fine motor skill would be more like something. Okay, now we're going to grab the pinky. Basically, anything that would take your brain more than one step to do. Right, and you're not thinking like that when you're in fight, flight, or freeze. So people would normally be able to do stuff, just can't do it effectively unless you train. And so people wouldn't get it. I wouldn't actually tase them, but it would get my point across. I would say that's why you've got to train for realistic combat, folks, because when you're out there fighting, man, like, and I would always say, like my boxing trainer used to tell me, like, your worst day of practice is going to be the best day in your fight, man. Like so you got to make damn sure that your worst day is better than anybody else's, you know what I mean? So that's
Absolutely.
something I
I,
always added
I
to it.
emphasize that to my students. Have you suffered any type of wounds or,
So I
injuries injuries during your career? Have you been tased? Have you been stabbed? Have you been shot?
So I've been tased, not in the line of duty, just because I wanted to see what it felt like. So I
Just
did
got-
that a few different times. The pepper spray. I mean, aside from being punched, hit, stuff like that, I've been stabbed in the leg. That's about it. I was stabbed in the leg. It was actually Indianapolis, Indiana. Was off duty, but full police authority. They would hire police off duty. You'd be in your uniform, and we were working at this club, and it was for people 18 to 20 years old, right? A club they could go to, not drink, and it was in a real crappy area. Every night there'd be shots fired, and there'd just be these mobs of people. One night we're trying to push these mobs. I mean, tons of people were surrounded me, and it felt like somebody had kneed me in the side of the leg. And I look over, and there's this kitchen knife hanging out of the side of my leg, and it didn't really hurt until I saw it. But once I saw it hanging in there, it started hurting pretty bad. One time I will say martial arts saved my life. My sergeant had chased a guy into a trailer. I don't remember if he'd stolen a car or what it was. Anyway, he chased in the front, and I went into the back of the trailer. And I was pretty big at that point. And if you've ever been in some of those single wide trailers, man, the halls aren't very big, so I'm barely fitting down
yeah,
one.
I grew
And
up in.
so I go in the back to try to sneak up on this guy, and I turn my light on. And as I turn my light on, man, I just happened to see this knife inches away from my stomach, man. This guy was coming at me with a knife. And I'd like to tell you the technique I did. Honestly, I don't remember. Whatever I did, I got the knife away from him and somehow got him on the ground and arrested. But
It
if
was
I had
all
to turn my light on,
it was
what?
all instinct. The guy came at you, and
Yeah,
you reacted. How martial arts has taught you to react
yeah.
in life,
If,
and man.
if I had to turn my light on a second later, man, I would have been, I would have been in bad way.
Well,
So,
thank God that you're here and able to have this
no
conversation
doubt.
because of your martial arts intervention.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. It certainly has saved my ass on a lot of occasions.
Let me ask you this, Chris. Are are you a spiritual man?
Yeah, I would say so.
Do you believe in God and the Creator?
Yeah, no doubt. My religion, my kind of philosophy on religion is probably a little confusing, different. Um, I was a Christian for a long time, and I actually converted to Islam, Muslim, and still am. But that being said, as well, I mean, everything in this world kind of falls under God or Creator in one way or another. But I have no clue who that creator is, what he has done, everything else. I mean, even if you believe everything in the Bible, if you believe everything in the Quran, that doesn't mean it's the whole story, man. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between those times. So I really just base everything on my own personal relationship with God and the universe. Some of the discussions we have had certainly don't fall in line with either one of those. So I just kind of follow my heart and my head when it comes to that type of thing.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I guess you could say like I'm a Christian, but I believe in reincarnation. That always leaves them with a big head scratcher, you know what I mean? But
Well,
I think there's a
I
lot of
don't.
I think there's a
I'm
lot
not
of
sure
truth
how.
in religious books, and there's a lot of psyops going on as well. And it's our job to, sift through all the psyops, just like in real life, and find the truth. And that's part of our spiritual journey.
I've been
Let me ask you this: being a police officer, how much true evil do you know exists in the world compared to just insanity or mental illness? Or I
Good
mean,
question,
you've seen it. You've seen it close up.
brother. That's the reason I do believe in God, man. Um, when I was a Christian, I would tell people like, I don't know that I'm going to heaven or not because it's not that I believe that God's there. It's that I know that God's there because you can't have the yin without the yang. You can't have the evil without the good. You can't have Lucifer without God, right? And I know damn well evil exists because I see it all the time, man. Hey, listen, mental illness certainly a thing, no doubt, but man, you cannot deny that there is true evil in this world. I mean, look out the window, watch the news. I mean, I have looked into people's eyes and seen nothing. I mean, you can look at the DSM and call them a psychopath or a sociopath, whatever you want, man. But look, no, there is certainly true evil. Some of the shit that I have seen, and or you want to call it supernatural, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I have seen some just absolutely mind blowing, crazy shit, and there is no other way it can exist without being evil.
I that is one thing that I agree with you 100% is the reason that I was kind of agnostic before, although I had kind of a Presbyterian background. I was baptized when I was a baby and stuff like that, but never really, my parents didn't really follow that very strictly. And so I just grew up believing what I learned in science class. Wanted to be an astronaut. My grandpa was the top test pilot for the entire Navy, and then he was in charge of all of test flight, and he flew 50 missions in Korea and 60 missions in Vietnam, and he had astronauts over to the house in the Florida Keys and all sorts of stuff. And I grew up this pampered, like, kind of rich kid, and I always wanted to be an astronaut. And as I've done, this research, I would like to think of myself as I pretty much have a PhD in, the rabbit hole at this point. And yeah, I mean these Malachian, Saturn, Luciferian, whatever you want to call them, elite trust fund dorks, that run the world have proven to me, that there has to be a God, because they don't even believe the scientific system that they set up for us, because they're busy doing child sacrifice and these
That
rituals of the method of revelation, that they have to do, where they have to put this symbolism in front of you, or they think that these dark entities are going to come down on them. It's like the main requirement in their Saturn religion. And you see this
well,
Saturn worship everywhere. You start looking into the English language and you're like, holy shit, like, yes, this is good versus evil.
shit, man. Anybody who's ever read about Bohemian Grove would have to acknowledge that it's in our government and it's about everywhere. I mean, look at that crap. Come on.
But I mean, my mom, it's like my parents didn't even know what that was. They never even seen the video and the picture that Alex Jones provided so long ago. It's like people are so asleep, man. They are so asleep. I'm like, what
You
kind of scientific method is going on here? Like, can someone explain to me, like,
you've
what's
got to
so?
read you, you've got to read books by Colonel Dave Grossman. Have you heard of him?
You gotta say that
One
again.
of
Broke up a little
Warrior
bit.
Mindset, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Um, he's got some
Okay.
books called On Killing, On Combat, and Mindset of a Warrior. And he really goes in talking about, I'm sure you've heard the term like wolf and sheepdog, stuff like that before. And he gives a
Yeah.
really good analogy that would apply to that. He was talking about police, but this would apply really everywhere, right? The reason people hate policemen is because it's a constant reminder that there are people out there who want to hurt them, right? People don't want the cops around. They don't want the military around until the wolf is right there. Then they're needed. Then they're wanted, right? But people want to be blind, man. People don't want to see, because if they look out the window and they're always reminded that evil is there, most people aren't able to deal with that on a daily basis, man. They want to close their eyes and purposely put it off. They think, well, even in the back of their mind subconsciously, they may know it's there. In their minds, they're thinking next generation will figure it out. Next generation will figure it out. Don't let it be me. There's a subset of people, like, when 9/11 hit, man. A lot of people are hugging their families and saying, "Oh, thank God, thank Jesus, I wasn't on that flight." Then there's another subset of people like me, probably like you, that would say, "God damn, I wish I had been on that flight." You know, and it's a big difference in just mentality and mindset, man.
Yeah. I mean, I think the world is so much more interesting than they want us to know. And they go out of their way to hijack everything and hide everything. I mean, how far into those documentaries did you get that I sent you?
I watched a good part of them.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think after looking at some of the evidence? You know what I mean? Where it seems like we're NASA's lying about everything.
Well, first of all, NASA's run by the government, so no doubt they're going to be lying. Um, you know, as far as the shape of the Earth, we'll probably fundamentally disagree on that. I certainly do feel like the Earth is an oblate spheroid, I believe is what they would call it. But of course, NASA lies about everything. They're a government entity. Um, but that's the shape of the Earth isn't really something I would consider up for a whole lot of debate. I know you feel otherwise, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily, you know, um, I just don't believe what they're telling me. And if they tell me it's this, I don't believe that anymore. It's like my old friend in high school that used to lie to me all the time. And then you realize they're lying all the time. And then they tell you
Well,
something
you got to
else.
remember though, man, the most successful liars are the ones who include a bit of truth in it, right? So I'm sure some of what they say is truth, just because that's they know how to sell the bullshit to you. But that's what makes it so hard to figure out. It's kind of like you and I believe, met when we started arguing over the whole moon landing thing. That's
No,
how
it's
we
true.
got
It's true.
talking in the first place.
And it's the
You
evidence
know, I
of like Buzz Aldrin admitting they didn't go, and then these guys come back and they won't even look up. They're just, I mean, you're a detective, you see body language. I mean, these guys supposedly come back from the moon landing, and Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins won't even look up. They're just completely
well,
ashamed.
I I've got a couple theories on that. One, I don't know. Maybe we did lie about Apollo 11. I don't know. I do think we went to the moon at some point. Um, I think we went to the moon and we probably found something either that we're not supposed to or nobody else should find. I think, well, whatever the case is, whether we faked the moon landing or not, I will tell you, I certainly believe there's a whole hell of a lot more going on with that than we certainly know right now and will probably ever know.
What did you think about the Go Fast rocket that got shot straight up into the atmosphere, and it stopped on a complete dime? It hit something. Now if we were thinking, the alternative model from the documentaries, that would be called the firmament. The dome made of whatever, that encases,
Yeah,
that keeps the vacuum of
yeah. I
space from our atmosphere. Um, so the Go Fast rocket
try
straight up.
familiar with the firmament.
What?
Yeah, I didn't. I missed that part. I didn't see anything about that. That's something to look at to really be able to have much of an
Okay,
opinion
yeah,
or
it's
comment on.
pretty interesting. I mean, it's an amateur guy that attaches a GoPro thing to a rocket, and he
Yeah,
shoots it straight up, and then fucking it hits something and stops on a dime. Like, it's going 2,000 miles an hour, and then just stops on a dime, and then just kind of starts floating back down. And you're like, well, what the fuck
yeah,
did it hit? And then you start seeing all
yeah,
these SpaceX rockets going up, and they're always hitting this this thing at the top. And you look at Werner von Braun's his gravestone, it says Psalms 19:1, which is, let the firmament showeth his handiwork. I mean, do you think that's a deathbed confession that God won and he couldn't break through? What do you think?
again, that's not something I've read about either. I will tell you, anybody that's going to have a view on, and people would be considered, if they're pushing the flat Earth theory or the whether they're pushing any of these things that could be considered QAnon or rabbit hole or whatever else. You're going to have people that are extremists. You're going to have people that are just dabbling in it, but they are so bent on getting others to see their point of view, they don't see any others. The same with NASA, man. They're so bent on getting others to see their point of view, they're going to do whatever the case. So I'm just going to assume that there's going to be entities on both sides of the spectrum that are going to lie about it one way or another, right? So here's what I will say about any of that. I've looked at a lot of the theories on both sides, and if you take one single theory, it's going to be very easy to believe either way you go, right? And like anything else, man, the truth is out there to be found. I just can't say for sure which it is. You know,
I'm
if I go watch a bunch of videos on what we're talking about, it's going to say, "Oh shit, man, we, you know,
yeah,
the Earth is a dome. We certainly didn't go to space." But then if you watch the other side of it, it's going to be very easy to say the other. So what I try to do is I try to look at things objectively with my own mind and think, okay, if I believe this way, why do I believe that way, right? What evidence do I see that I am actually smart enough and intelligent to understand and dissect for myself, and you know, why do I believe this? And, you know, a couple
absolutely.
things that
I'm
come
the
to
same
mind for me.
way. I just want to digest all the information, and then I can decide using my own detective skills, what I think the truth is. And
Right.
after when all the pieces start fitting so easily and you're done being a detective and now the pieces to the puzzle are just fitting in, everywhere, you're getting closer and closer. And I really do feel like after I started studying the English language, I am pretty far, you would say pretty far down the rabbit hole in every area of this reality. I'm not going to say I'm an expert in everything, but I'm going to say that, people send me stuff, and like you did, I sent you something, you looked at it right away. Like, I send stuff to people and I want them to just look at evidence and look at stuff and try to open their mind and realize that this place is a lot more special than they want you to know, and we're a lot more special than they want us to know. And that's why all these monks that live in and all they do is meditate and do martial arts, they have superhuman powers, man. They can stick their hands in water and make the water boil. They can sit in boiling oil and not get burned. They can walk on paper. I mean, they can do all sorts of things. And I think that's what the elite are really trying to hide from us, is, keep us from accessing those superpowers like Wim Hof. I know you've heard of that guy, right? Wim Hof, he's the
Yeah.
Iceman, climbed Mount Everest in just his
Yeah.
shorts.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And now he's
Yeah.
got a whole group of people that climb mountains in just shorts, because it's not just him. He wants you to realize it's you. It's you, it's me, it's all of
Now,
us. You know?
at the end of the day, man, the elite just want to keep us divided in whichever way they can, whether it's race, religion, I mean, you name it. Any way they're going to be able to divide us and keep us stupid and fighting amongst ourselves, the better they're going to be off. Be the worst day in history for them if everybody was to realize, you know, how close related we were and actually band together and, you know, take a stand. But I mean, look at this stuff that's going on right now, man. The biggest political issue we have right now is what's going on in for transgendered folks, abortion, stuff like that, which, hey, listen, maybe that is important, but when we have a failing economy, when our government is lying to us, when people are missing, there are things that are a hell of a lot more important to that. But the politicians and the elites are keeping it focused on that because those are the things that are going to invoke the most emotions right now, right? And emotions are what get people in trouble to where they're not even willing to listen to a rational argument. And when you have that, it's very easy to keep people divided and fighting amongst themselves, and that's exactly what they want. You know, people who are in dissension are very easy to conquer. I mean, it's just how it is.
I mean, 800,000 kids a year in the United States alone go missing, and it's nowhere. It's nowhere in the news, man. They put up this stupid ass divide and conquer fucking script that's, like you're just saying, and they get people fighting over that and not looking into like fucking child trafficking up the wazoo that's going on everywhere every day. And yeah, it really does blow my mind. Now we're 40 minutes in, and I want to ask you, you first talked to me, in the inbox about Mount Shasta, and
Yeah.
I don't really know anything about it, and I looked it up on Google, images, and the biggest thing that sticks out to me like crazy is it's kind of a loner. It's like it's like flat everywhere around it, and then there's just this huge white peak in the middle
Yeah,
of, like, and I'm sure there's
yeah,
other mountains around, but it's just kind of weird how it's just a single peak, and then there's flat land all around it. And from an aerial view, it's is very mysterious looking, I must say. Now,
yeah.
my one friend was telling me that there's all kinds of underground bases and tunnels underneath there. Can you shed light on what you know about
I,
Mount Shasta and the mysteries that go on there?
you know, I can tell you, man. When I first read about that, it was just something that was just like calling to me, man. It is a priority for me to actually get there and see this for myself. Because what's interesting is even people who don't have, if you want to call it a supernatural experience, right? They all say that just energy is different there, right? You walk onto that mountain and something is just different, and you've looked into the missing 411. There's just a plethora of people who have just vanished from that area as well. Now, as far as the secret bases, underground stuff, I don't know. I hope that's not it. I haven't read in that. What has interested me a lot more with it is more the alien, the supernatural, the like Telos Lemuria side. So
Yeah,
the biggest prevailing theory,
about the
yeah,
Lumerians,
that you will
Talos.
see is like, yeah. So and then I guess apparently in the days of Atlantis kind of had its, I don't know if you want to call rival, whatever it was Lemuria. So you kind of had Lemuria, you kind of had Atlantis. These two big superpowers that um, they theorized that they kind of went on to, whether you want to call it nuclear war, whatever it was at that point, went on and wanted so much power they destroyed themselves, and the Lemurians went into Mount Shasta essentially to live and hide and live out the remainder of time, whatever the case is. And the most research I have done and talk about the city in there named Telos, and what I can't really figure out, is what I would like to know. Is there like a tunnel you can walk into this place, or is it a spiritual thing? You have to be taken in there, because there's a lot of people that claim they go there and they have this, almost spiritual journey during meditation, where they will meet this guide. And there's one name that's prevailing, and I can't remember this fellow's name at the moment, that takes them into Talos and they see it. But then there's people too who claim that they have actually walked into this place and seen it, almost like Middle Earth. I would think that those two kind of theories would go hand in hand, where you talk about holes in Antarctica or whatever that lead into Middle Earth, and this Talos maybe being one of the access points to that. But whatever it is, I will say there have been so many reports of it, so many disappearances, and there's nothing really about it that I have read that seems sinister. A lot of the missing 411 you hear in national parks just almost has a really sinister vibe to it. There's nothing about anything there that just feels really sinister to me. So, what I hope and what I believe is not really a government military type thing there, but almost a lost civilization, or something that the majority of people are never either going to believe or never going to be able to access, because they can't get their mind to produce the right wavelength, or the right hertz, or whatever you want to call it, to be able to access it. So I don't know if it's one of those things you need to be conscientious enough to reach another level of consciousness, or another realm of reality to get to, or if it's just someplace you can walk into. Whatever it is, I know I've got to go there and just kind of see it for myself.
Yeah, you have a calling. You have some sort of spiritual journey
Yeah,
that's calling you there, man.
I really mean, it's just this thing's like pulling me there. Like so if you ever read about me coming up disappearing, man, you'll know where I'm at, right? It's
Yeah,
so I'm
so we'll,
I'm
we'll
enjoying
I'll
my
I'll
days
make
out in
sure I
Telos.
grab a big group of people to go looking for you at Mount Shasta. Yeah, yeah, hell yeah.
That's right. Now
um,
it's just
so
stuff like that that really intrigues me, man.
it's so interesting because I'm really far down the Tartarian rabbit hole, which is pretty much all of history is a lie, and the proof is in the pudding. If I got 1,000 pictures of some sort of what it looks to be some sort of heat melt that melted buildings, that caused a mud flood that flooded the almost the entire earth. And you have all these Greek style buildings all over, and maybe that's what the Atlantis or the Lumerians, and you should really look into it. And I don't want to get too far off track here because that's what always happens. So I want to stick to Mount Shasta. Um, but yeah, man, what you're saying with Lumerian, this atomic war, could be what melted the buildings, what was one of the resets, and we could have had a couple of these
Yeah.
resets. They're already
Well, I'm sure we have.
there was one 14,000 years ago, and then another one, a couple hundred years ago, and so it's pretty interesting. And now, what is Klaus Schwab pushing? The Great Reset 2030. So this word reset keeps coming up over and over again in our history cycle, and yeah, man, I feel like it's our duty to speak up, and if we want our kids, to have a future that looks anything
Yeah.
like we did
Well,
when we were growing up, then we have to at least speak up while we can, before they completely shadow
I,
ban everyone and turn everything off.
you know, I if you had have asked me, you know, 5 years ago, you said, "Hey, do you think, we'll never see end of time, civil war, revolutionary type stuff?" I'd say, "Nah, you're crazy. Maybe in the next couple of generations." Now, I have a pretty strong feeling it's going to happen in our lifetime, and I will tell people that we talk about the sheepdog versus the wolves, everything else. People are going to have to dig pretty soon, pretty deep, more sooner than later, to figure out how open they really want their mind to be, because uh, whether you want to call it biblical, whatever you want to call it, man, darkness is coming. And if you're not willing to stand up and fight, you're going to be standing in line with everybody else, ready to take that mark or ready to get your government cheese or whatever the case is, and turning a blind eye when friends and family are getting slaughtered for not doing what the government or the elites say. And I really hope that we can reach a point of enlightenment to where people can see what's actually going on, and they're actually going to be ready to put their fists up and do what they need to do to protect their family and future generations, because the way we are moving right now is just absolutely not sustainable. And I mean, you can look at that in a lot of different fashions. Economically, it's not sustainable. I mean, just strictly from a world happening, leave everything else we've talked out about it. I mean, how long have they been trying to broker peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran? We've never been able to do it, but all of a sudden China does it. Now, China has got those two along. I mean, talking about, the world standard dollar going to being Chinese. I mean, what there's a lot of stuff happening that could just, I mean, it's one of those things like at some point we could wake up very quick and the ATMs don't work and the banks are gone, man. And I think it's going to happen that quick. When that
That
when that switch flips,
I
man, it's on.
say that, man, it's gonna be like a flick of the switch. So I've been looking into a lot of these underground, bases and bunkers, and I've seen this one trucker. He drives into Kansas City, and then he when he gets done, he makes a video, and he's like, "Dude, I just drove from Kansas City to Las Vegas under fucking ground." And I'm like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" And then you start thinking, oh, all of these guys, like they all these secret funding projects, and where's our money really going? And then you realize there's underground bases so big, they're
Oh,
hundreds of miles big, right?
sure.
So
Well, I'm sure the elite have access to something around there. They can get Washington D.C. to Los Angeles in a matter of hours. You know what I mean? I'm sure
yeah,
there's roads and access points we'll never be able to see.
absolutely. It's it's
I mean,
it's it's so dark what these guys do at the very top. I mean, it's
it's
absolutely
funny you said that. I have a buddy of mine who we have a mutual friend that's a trucker, and he drives a lot as well, and he travels up to Canada and back a lot, and he crossed the border into Canada and was talking about lots of installations with the Chinese military being there. I mean, if it was this year or last year, Canada sold a bunch of their land for some reason to China, which is really odd. But seeing that the Chinese military setting up in Canada right across our border. Man, if that's not a warning sign, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I would agree with you if I tend to believe the story of, hey, are is all of our stuff going to still say made in China when we're going to war with China? I mean, I just don't buy any of it. I think it's all theater. These guys are all the same families, been running this shit, and these
Oh
boys
yeah, no doubt.
are like, go ahead.
Look no further than the United Nations, man. I mean, come on,
Exactly.
like yeah, it really what I would say is like you want to talk about these underground bases and who has the power and all that. Look at the world's top politicians and the world's richest and the world's most elite, right? So think your dumbass Bidens and your Putins and then think like your Sam Walton and your Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, people like that, man.
And at the
They're the
very
ones who have
top,
access
what
to
these
the
guys
shit.
don't realize, what I try to explain to people, is that these guys worship this Bohemian Grove owl bull god from Babylon named Moloch. And that's what he was named in the
Yep.
Babylonian. And then when he was in Greece, he was known as Kronos. And then when he was in Rome, he was known as Saturn. And the Hebrews called him El. And the ancient Sumerians called him Atat. And people don't realize that this is the same dude. And this is really who the devil, who they got us thinking,
Right.
worrying about this guy in red, they got us saying Satan, which just means adversary. But no
Yeah.
one's talking about Moloch, and Moloch and Ishtar go together. And when I start trying to explain this to people, they just slowly start backing away, and walking away,
Yeah.
because it just, they don't realize this is a spiritual war, and the people at the top, they worship this Saturn, this
Oh,
Moloch.
dude,
This
look at the Pope, man. Come on. The Pope
they've
isn't
got
one of those
Moloch.
evil son of a bitches.
They've got an idol. They've got a big statue of Moloch right at the Vatican, and people walk by and they're
Well,
like, "That's weird." It's just like
tell me
it
how
blows my mind.
it's okay that all of a sudden the Vatican gets together and decides to leave 56 different books out of the Bible because it doesn't fit the narrative. It's what they call the Apocrypha, and you can still find it. But I mean, like the second book of Enoch and a bunch
Yeah,
of those just left out.
I'm reading the Book of Enoch right now. I mean, I'm one of those guys that reads 10 books at a time, and the Book of
Yeah,
Enoch is one of them, and I absolutely love it. And
yeah.
the fallen angel story is the
The Watchers.
Anunnaki story. It's the same
Yeah,
fucking thing.
yeah.
So in the end, they got us fighting over, all the different ways we can get back to the creator. And in the end, I feel it's about good and evil, and this is a spiritual war. And it's our job, to find out what's going on with Mount Shasta.
I would agree. Yeah. Maybe if war breaks out, I can hide there. That's where I'll go. I take my family. We'll live in Taos, whatever, man.
Right.
But
I
yeah,
mean, is all this alien disclosure that's going on, I mean, 50 years ago they were assassinating people talking about aliens, and now they're like, oh,
oh
they're
yeah,
real. There's a mothership.
yeah.
It's just,
Now
I tend to
CIA
think,
comes out with unclassified shit. Have you looked at some of the declassified documents or looked into astral travel, out of body experience, any of that stuff?
yes,
Talking
the
about some neat shit. I mean,
Monroe Institute, and all, like, about the Monroe Institute, right?
no, I don't think so.
That's where the CIA,
Oh, is that where
actually,
they did their tests?
yeah,
Yeah,
they did
yeah.
that whole program.
I've tried that several times doing astral travel, out of body experience, and I've had some pretty cool episodes with that, man. I've got right to the point of being able to leave my body, just quite not quite there yet, because it gets really scary. Like your body
Yeah,
starts vibrating. It's the craziest damn thing. Like, but I mean, the CIA acknowledges that it can be done. I mean, they've got.
yeah.
They declassified all those. Nobody's going to read through millions of pages
The
of that shit. But I
remote
mean,
remote viewing, leaving your body,
yeah,
all
remote
that
viewing.
stuff
Yeah,
proven to be true. It just goes to
yeah.
show you that there's something more going on. And I'm glad you touched on this, because I saw an episode of a podcast where this guy lost his dad, and he just was walking by this strange lady, and she said something to him that only his dad would say to him. And she said, he's letting you know he's okay. And then he was like, whoa, that's fucked up. You know what I mean? And he was really heartbroken over the loss of his dad. And, as most of us are when we lose our dad. And, and so what he did was he wanted to see if she was telling the truth at the same time, make a documentary. And so he grabbed her and he pretty much took her in a room and just grabbed random people that he didn't know, that she didn't know, and she hit 100 out of 100. That's how good of a median she was. She hit 100 out of 100, and it just goes to show you that there's more than what they're telling you when they're trying to make you believe it's all just dust in the wind,
Well,
dude. Like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. They're not telling you the truth, and they know
yeah.
this. This is why they do child sacrifice. This is why they pray to Moloch, because they believe there's way more to the story behind the scenes, and it's just different than what our spiritual side would probably want to, you know, uh,
And it's a hard leap for people to be like, hey, I'm ordinary, but there's people out there with superpowers, right? People are going to look at you like you're nuts. But to really, and here's how I know that's accurate, right? You remember a little bit ago, an hour ago or so now, we were talking about the gross and fine motor skills, right? I
yes.
was talking about that in the Coach Porter phone about that stuff, right? And I was talking about how when that fight, flight, or freeze complex gets in that stress, you lose a lot of your ability to put those fine motor skills into action, right? That's true until you practice it, right? They did a study of snipers in World War II, Vietnam, and Korea. So snipers use a lot of fine motor skills, right? During the things. What they were finding is that snipers who are brand new, right? When that fight, flight, or freeze complex kicks in before you shoot somebody, they're missing more of their shots, right? But what they found, right, is when they have practiced and that fight, flight, or freeze, like they have really practiced that one skill over and over again. When that fight, flight, or freeze complex kicks in, not only are they still able to use those fine motor skills, but they are able to use them in a better and more efficient capacity than they could before that complex kicks in. Well, man, that's a superpower. That's talking about what your body can do when you get to those, like I think it's between 130 and 150 beats per minute. That stressor kicks in. Now all of a sudden you're able to do something more efficiently than you could do it before. Man, that's a superpower, right? And it's right there that people could break these things down and actually see how they happen if they actually wanted to. But nobody's going to think of like, oh, being able to use fine motor skills, that's not a superpower. Well, it really is though when you think about it. If you're able to train your body to do something that it would not ever able to do before and somebody else can't do, man, it's the same shit, right? You're just having to train your body how to think different and do it.
Yeah, man, superpowers. I mean, I've studied these superhumans, and absolutely what you're talking about is, on its way to going to beyond, superpowers. Like this one kid was blind and he could play basketball, he could do any type of sports, and he would make this clicking sound like a
Yeah,
dolphin at echolocation.
echolocation.
Yeah, he taught himself.
Yeah, they're using clickers now to do that. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and then this
Yeah.
other guy climbs walls. He's got like such sticky hands that he's pretty much like the real life Spider-Man. He could just climb up a fucking wall, just straight up. He doesn't even need to like grip onto anything. I mean, this
Well,
one
the
guy.
guy in the cold says it all, right? I mean, you can sit in sub-zero temperatures in your shorts and thrive. I mean, that says it all right there. I mean, there is a reason, and it's been showed and studied over and over again, right? How much energy you absorb through the work, just called grounding, walking outside with your shoes
Yes,
off and your bare feet, man.
so glad you said that.
I mean, there's all sorts of shit that if people would just so many times people hear something that doesn't make sense to them. They're like, "Oh, forget that. That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard." Instead of just taking the time to read it a little bit, man, like before you say that, why don't you actually educate yourself a little bit and come to your own conclusion instead of believing what you're told to believe by the masses, right?
Yeah.
Groupthink mentality is what is going to absolutely kill this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's this echo chamber, and I want you to know that, I'm the farthest thing from an echo chamber because I'm literally trying to debunk myself all the time. Like, I'm
Right.
literally trying to debunk, like, and after seeing something over and over and looking at the evidence, it's like then that's when I start, then it's going to be hard to switch my view after I've looked at so much evidence of something, you know what I mean? And I get into these arguments with people, not really arguments, but I'm trying to get them to realize, hey, there's more. Like like I found 100 666s in our science literature, the same science literature
Yeah.
that's pushed by NASA, the same science literature that's pushed by our government. You know, I found all these 666s in there. And do I think that the devil's so powerful? He's just inserted himself into
No,
science.
it's
Do I think these dorks, these trust fund dorks, set up the system to make
oh
fun
sure they
of us?
want to program everybody, right?
They want to make fun of us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, anything I look, man, I just look at it like predictive programming. They're trying to make things so normal, and so then when it actually happens, right, it's not a big deal. Like if you look at a lot of shit that Biden America is doing, man, almost following Hitler's playbook, right? It's just on a slower pace, right? Because what did Hitler do, right? He got everybody dependent on the government, right? Then he gave them all health care, universal health care. Then he took the guns. Then he killed everybody. Well, in America, if you just came in and tried to take guns, you're going to have an issue. They know that, right? So they're getting everybody fighting, getting everybody dependent on the government. Really, if they ever push universal health care, man, we're fucked, right? They're going to push universal health care or a monthly allotment of money where everybody is so dependent on the government. When they come to take away guns, people may not like it, but they're going to say, "Oh, I don't want to give up my meal ticket, so here, take the guns because it's better losing my $2,000 a month in free health care," and then we're gone. I mean, it's just yeah, scary.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. And I just believe that it's so much more of a spiritual war than people want to realize. And maybe it's just the top 300 people at the top that really believe that, and everyone else is just following orders. But in the end, this whole system has been set up to worship this Saturn dork. Like, look at the Space Force logo, look at Universal's logo, look at, you know, uh, almost every single logo is Saturn worship. And you're
Yeah,
okay, dude.
you want to see what's going on, man? What the fuck do you think's under Disney World? I mean, really. I mean, imagine what's going on in that place. I will tell you, man. Disney World, Disneyland, those places. There's Disney all over the world, and I mean, you want to follow the sex trafficking trade? Look no farther than Disney World. I mean, you know how many kids go missing out of those places? I mean, it's fucking crazy. Oh, the joyful place on earth. No, kids will never. They'd never do that. No, the hell they wouldn't, man. Kids go missing out of those places all the time. It's crazy. Sex
Yeah,
trafficking, man, is
no,
just one of those things that
where's the whole, like, 2020, where's the whole 2020 story about that shit? You know what I mean? No, they get you.
never gonna happen, man. Because the people at the top of the fucking media are right in with the people at the everything else. Fox is against CNN against Fox. Man, come on. The people at the top sitting back laughing at everybody who says no. All on the same side, man. Once you get high enough, the elites of everyone are all on the same side for the most part.
Yeah, they're all birds of the same feather. They all flock together. They're all going to the same stupid, like, yeah, Illuminati parties where they're all wearing masks and red hoods and doing rituals. And it's just a bunch of trust fund dork. It's just a bunch of trust fund dork shit, man. I mean, these guys can't manifest any real skills. They have to inherit anything, and they have all the money and all the power. And I feel like they're just bored, and so they pray to this dorky, you know, uh, you
No.
know, demon that they pray to, and they set up their whole system around that. And then they get us all fighting over these other things. And meanwhile, they control everything at the top, and people just they want to think you're a conspiracy theorist just because you love them and you're trying to wake people up to what's really going on. Because if they just look at the evidence, they'll realize, oh, they're lying about this, they're lying about this, they're lying about this, and all of history is a lie.
What do you think of the adrenochrome thing?
I think it's, an absolute, reality that
Do you?
these dorks believe that if they do this, it's going to serve them uh, some sort of
My
benefit.
understanding that like the adrenochrome is supposed to be making you scared shitless. Is that kind of what? I mean, I've tried to look that up. You can
So what
buy
they do is
peptides on
when you
their
torture
website.
somebody, they get adrenaline, right? And what they
Right.
believe and what I try to get people to realize, it doesn't matter if we believe this or not. They believe it, so they act
Right.
accordingly. And and so they
Yeah.
scare the shit out of the kid as much as possible, and then somehow extract the adrenochrome, from their brain, at the max level of terrorism. So, they terrorize them, and then, then they
I
execute
guess
them, and
the
then meanwhile, the
the one.
organ harvesting, like they'll get a, they organ after it's all said and done, they all the parts are used for organ harvesting. So this is a very, very dark like
Oh,
business
sure.
that these guys are into. And you start seeing, The Rock making child molester robot jokes, and like you said, predictive programming. This is getting everyone desensitized so much to where I think in
Yep.
the very far future they'll bring back open child sacrifice and stuff like that, and people will be like, "Oh, that's just what
Brother,
they do.
listen.
This is just what they do."
I'm glad you brought that up because here's what so many people don't know, right? And here's what I see. You're 100% right. Well, but I won't take it quite as far as a sacrifice. Let's talk about child. There's an organization called NAMBLA, if you've heard of them. It's a North American Man Boy Love Association, right? Every single fucking year, they put bills towards Congress trying to legalize and normalize forms of pedophilia, right? And every year they get more for it. Never makes the news. Nobody hears about it. Every year. Man, law enforcement, NAMBLA was a big fucking thing. We always knew about it, got the updates on it, man. Always. And people, that would never happen. That would never happen. Well, listen, man, 50 years ago, people thought sexuality would never be legalized either. Then it's, oh, you're a bigot. You're comparing homosexuality. No, I'm not comparing. What I am saying is things that we never thought would happen, happen. You want to talk about desensitization, man? Look at what it took to get a rated R rating on a movie 30 years ago compared to what it takes to get one now. PG movies we watch now would have had an R rating when we were kids, right? It just gradually moves that direction, right? Every day it happens. The video games that we see, man, killing people, whatever else. Yes, we are. We're getting desensitized to violence just as populous we are. It's not that normally happens. But anyway, I digress. NAMBLA every year tries to do this, and they get closer and closer and closer. There's always a bill. And now if you look in, rumor has it, in the new DSM that's going to be coming out, there are and all this is going to be recognized as a mental disorder and things that require treatment and etc. It's already being normalized whether we know it or not.
Yeah, man, you're absolutely 100% right. And it's so fucked up that they're trying to to push this, and you people need to realize that this is done purposely, man. This isn't organic, man. This isn't natural. This isn't just happening. This is being pushed very hard for a reason. For a reason. And if you
Yep,
dig down and look at this from a spiritual war side and stop thinking this is all nuts and bolts, and look into why these guys do rituals, you'll realize there's a lot more to the story. And people need to wake the
no
fuck up,
doubt.
not being so distracted by this shit that doesn't matter. This shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah, no doubt.
Chris, let me ask
You
you
know,
this. We'll switch gears a little bit real fast. Um, and a scientist brought this to my attention. They say that we're being bombarded by little meteorites all day, every day, little asteroids, and the only reason that we're all not freaking destroyed by these things is because they burn up in our atmosphere. How is it that these guys were able to walk on the moon without having to find a cave right away to hide underneath, from all the meteorites that would be hitting a an atmosphereless uh, uh, body? And that was brought to my attention by a scientist. I thought that was really interesting. Did you ever think about that angle?
no, I never really did. That's interesting. I guess my first thought would be, I mean, when you're planning one of these space expeditions, right? Planning it very specific. I don't know what technology for asteroid detection was like, 60 years ago, but I know now a lot of it's pretty decent. You also got to think that, when we rocket up there, we're moving as fast as a lot of those things would be too. So I would assume though that there's certainly always a possibility of it. I don't know. I would think. Let's just say for a let's just say for argument's sake for a second, let's say the earth is round and the moon landing was real and we do all these great things in space, right? I would think that anytime you would go up there, it's going to be somewhat of a crapshoot if something bad happens or not anyway, right? It's kind of like, if you're going to dive down into the Marianas Trench, it's kind of going to be a crapshoot whether, something you've never seen eat your ass or whatever blows up on you or implodes or whatever the case is.
You
So,
wouldn't believe how much I think
but I,
about
I don't
what
know.
goes on down there. Like what I mean, for coming from the Florida Keys, coming from growing up on a sailboat, I mean, I've seen some shit under the water that keeps me out of the water. You know what I mean? And
Ocean scares the shit out
it
of
is
me, bro.
really interesting to think about. Do aliens come from outer space, or do they come just from the other side of Antarctica, where they won't let us come from? Are they from Hollow
Do they
Earth?
come from Mount Shasta? Shit, I don't know.
Are they from underneath the water, like in that movie The Abyss, man? Like that, man, I
Yeah,
was into that movie The Abyss when it came out, man.
yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't want to even pretend to be an expert on anything when it comes to like the Earth being round or the moon landing. Anything. It's one of those things that I've just never really given enough of a crap about to really look into. So anything I say about it's just going to be purely conjecture, opinion, because I don't have enough facts to really back it up. The thing I will say on the Earth part is what gets me thinking. If the Earth is not truly a spheroid of some kind, right? Somebody better explain like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and stuff like that to me, because if we're more of a flat, where is the pressure coming from for these things to happen? I mean, the only way that would be explainable is if we are a sphere or square or triangle or whatever, where it's connected in that sort of a form for the pressure to be coming in on itself for that thing type of thing to repeatedly happen. So
This
that's
is
the
where
first
I
thing
try
that
to
really comes to
explain
mind.
to people where I think the psyop really comes in. We know the CIA created the Flat Earth Society, and that's not actually what anyone that claims to be a flat earther believes, and they know that that's just a psyop that was created. Um, so what I tend to look at is that, okay, well, the word flat earth itself is created like the word conspiracy theorist to get people to not look into it because it sounds so stupid. I remember the first time a girl came up to me and said something about it at the gym. I was like, that's the dumbest shit I ever heard. I don't need to look into that. We already figured that out a long time ago because I was so indoctrinated, and I hadn't really looked into it. And then I looked into it so much, I actually messaged that person and apologized for blowing them off and acting like an asshole. But the thing I think about it is that I'm more of a realm guy, which is we don't know what it's shaped like, and we don't know how far it goes, and I tend to think of it like that. You know they won't let us go past Antarctica. They won't let anyone go past there, and I feel like they're definitely hiding more land or something, so they're obviously lying about something. And when it comes to the word flat, we know that's complete bullshit because Mount Everest is 29,000 feet and the Marianas Trench is 30,000 feet. And you're talking a 60,000 foot difference, which is anything but flat, So soon as someone hears the word flat, it's like they've checked out. They've checked out, and that's done purposely. And my problem with most of the flat earth community is that they're trying to bring it back. They're trying to embrace it, that word, so much. And it's like, no, you should call it true earth, or call it a realm, or call it, something different. If you look into what Nikola Tesla thought it was, he thought it was shaped like a kind of like a donut, a torrent or
Really,
something
I
like
didn't
that.
know that.
So it's pretty interesting.
Nikola Tesla's he's one of the great minds, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I think he was trying to do was reverse engineer Tartarian technology that they found in the 1800s. And I'm going to send you a couple of more documentaries for you to look up when you get some time. And, I loved our conversation today. You're a great speaker, man. And you have a lot of
Appreciate it.
knowledge. And I think we should do this again real soon, maybe
Oh
next
yeah,
or in a couple months. So that'd be really cool. I
anytime.
lost you on video probably about 14 minutes ago, so I'll just add like a picture in for you.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right.
I'll just add like a
Well,
picture.
next time I'll make sure to have my laptop up.
Yeah. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you, man, and keep fighting the good fight, keep changing people's lives and waking people up. And I think you should keep looking into what we're living on, even though it may not really matter. I think it just goes to show you the depths of how much these guys are lying and how spiritual this place really is and how special you are and how special I am and how special all humans are. And they need to realize that and, start taking control of their lives in a more positive way. So thank you, my brother, man. Anything else? Anything you want to say to anyone out there, or any plugs you want to plug in, or anything coming up that any, jiu-jitsu tournaments or seminars that you got going on? Are you there? All right. Well, I think we might have lost him, ladies and gentlemen, but that was a great conversation with Chris, and great guy, positive guy, trying to help people through martial arts and through positivity and through knowledge, and and that's the least we can do. That's the least we can do. So stay positive, stay the course, and keep fighting that fight, man. It is good versus evil. Love you all. Take care.